Welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I'm joined by Laura, an emergency room nurse whose BA in music goes mostly unused these days. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy to have you here. So, here's how this works. Laura will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Laura?
I am absolutely ready.
Great. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so fricking much?
I love Gilbert and Sullivan. So Gilbert and Sullivan were a pair of Victorian composer and librettist who worked together on 14 operettas. But the thing that really differentiates their operettas from other work of the time is that instead of just being puff pieces that really haven't stood the test of time at all, overall they age very well because in addition to being ridiculous and enjoyable, there's an underlying satire of politics, the convoluted law codes, incompetent people holding positions of high office and power, the ridiculousness of celebrity endorsements, and some super fun things like parodying the Gothic novels, which I absolutely adore. Ruddy Gore is one of my favorite operettas, and it's so much fun because it takes all of those character tropes and really just turns them on their head. And so you have these intensely engaging, ridiculous pieces of music and lyrics where the music and the lyrics work together so well that you really can't imagine one without the other. You have these moments of sublime beauty in the music, in addition to these incredibly difficult patter songs and these ridiculous lyrics, which are occasionally poking fun at the people who are singing them in terms of the characters, not the actors themselves, and are really just holding a light up and holding a mirror up to the society that's enjoying them at the time. So in addition to being ridiculous and beautiful, you can also just sort of take them at face value and enjoy them because there's this gorgeous music, there are these funny lyrics, there's this ridiculously convoluted plot, which would not hold water, but is always just so much fun. And it's just so much fun to listen to. The Act 1 finales, I think, are some of the most fantastic meldings of music and words that you can find in an opera or operetta, because you've got these dueling choruses, you've got these solos that layer on top of each other until you've got everyone singing full volume with all of this going. And so the choruses are doing this patter song, the solos are doing their solos soaring above it. And it's just so much fun and so engaging. And you get this little pleasurable little adrenaline rush listening to it. So you can enjoy it just on that basic level. But also if you have the knowledge of the time period, you can catch some references which haven't aged super well because there are some references to certain people, which you need to sort of be aware of in order to catch that particular layer of the joke. But there are also musical references. So
go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, so he'll pull from the styles of Donizetti, Wagner, Schumann, and Mendelssohn, and then the entirety of the operetta Princess Ida is written in blank verse. So yes, really very cool, and I love them so freaking much.
That's awesome. Thank you for telling us about Gilbert and Sullivan today.
My pleasure.
So how did your love of Gilbert and Sullivan begin?
When I was in 3rd grade, I was taken to see my first live show, which was The Mikado, being performed by Lamplighters Music Theater, which is a nonprofit Gilbert and Sullivan-centric theater in San Francisco that started in 1952.
So what was it like seeing that first show?
Amazing. I started trying to audition for them when I was in 8th grade, and I still have the very nice handwritten rejection letter from my first audition. And then I did actually go on to perform with Lamplighters when I was older and better at singing and not in 8th grade anymore.
You listed a lot of different things that stand out to you about Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. Was there any in particular that you remember first catching your attention as the reason why you wanted to be a part of it?
The humor of the words and the engagingness, that's not really a word, but the engagingness of the music. It catches you up and it carries you away with it.
Talk a little more about that, because a lot of people, if you hear about Victorian era shows, they're going to expect it to be hard to understand or hard to engage with today. But you've mentioned a bunch of times now that the music and lyrics really catch your attention and really stand the test of time.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, there are these underlying themes of things that are always going to hold true, like poking fun at social strata, politics, the law, incompetent people holding power. But also, speaking of lamplighters and making the words accessible, they have super titles, which makes it so much easier for people to understand the lyrics as they're being sung and really makes a huge difference in terms of the audience being able to appreciate all of the jokes. And they're in the process of doing a production of Ruddy Gore, which is the one that I talked about parodying Gothic novels. And they're setting it in Mexico, and they're fundraising right now to do bilingual super titles because they want to do a nuanced translation into Spanish that will get not only the words across, but also the underlying meaning of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love lamplighters. They're really cool. They also, so the thing about Gilbert and Sullivan that's a little problematic is some of the stuff has not aged super well. There were some uses of the N word in the text, which in common practice have been substituted with other things that change the meaning without detracting from the lyrics. But Mikado is set in Japan. It's set in a fictionalized version of Japan that really holds a mirror up to British society at the time. But there have been concerns about the setting of that. And so Lamplighters has changed it to be set in Renaissance Italy instead.
It sounds like there's a fantastic balance going on here about when you let the work stand on its own in the ways that it is still relevant and is still funny. Like, certainly we all have opinions about incompetent political figures today, just like humans always have. And at the same time, there's this tradition of making sure that these stories are still relevant today. And when there are ways that they would be harmful, making sure we get rid of that harm, or where's the ways they could be more helpful, more engaging, more beautiful, making them so.
Absolutely.
Talk a little more about those Act One finales. Do any of them stand out to you as your favorite?
Oh, that's like asking me to pick a favorite child. So, two of them stand out to me off the top of my head, and I'm probably going to think of more as I go on talking about this. There's the Act One finale in Ialanthi, which I absolutely love because it basically takes up half of the first act. It's this incredibly complicated brangle of a musical piece where it starts out very soft and very quiet, and one person is very sad about what's going on, another person's trying to comfort him, and then the people with competing interests are eavesdropping and deliberately misinterpreting what he's saying. And so, the person that he's in love with thinks that he's saying something totally different and gets very upset, and everyone comes in, and you've got these competing choruses going back and forth, and it's just really, really fun. It's very, very funny and crisp and brisk. And then there's the Yeoman of the Guard, which is their only tragic operetta, because Sullivan really wanted to write a serious work. And so Gilbert was like, all right, we'll give it a try. And that one is beautiful. And it's got this underlying emotion because the thought when the Act One finale happens is that the main character is going to come out and get killed. And then you find out, well, the rest of the chorus finds out what the audience has already known, which is that the main character has already escaped. It's this amazing high drama piece, and it's very much in the style of the Italian operas, pulling from like Donizetti and Puccini and everything like that, and just this very lush, dramatic sound. And Mikado is also really, really fun. And Princess Ida is also very, very fun. Princess Ida doesn't have as much of an Act One finale because that's the only one that has 3 acts. But you get a lot of really fun pieces in Princess Ida. So it's very difficult to pick favorites. I love them all.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential here for emotional roller coasters and also sort of a musical marathon. Like, the endurance of these performers must be fantastic.
Yes, especially when you consider that typically these are not microphoned performers. Generally speaking, you're performing to a smaller house. There might be some stage mics placed around, but usually speaking, these are not microphone performers. Ooh, my other favorite Act One finale is Impatience. I almost forgot about that one. Yes, that one is very, 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 very fun. So in that one, Patience is satirizing Oscar Wilde and Art Nouveau and the arts and crafts movement and aestheticism in general, and sort of like fads overall. So you have these dueling poets. You have this one guy, and then some new guy comes into town, and suddenly all the girls are interested in the new guy instead. And so you've got them dueling with each other for popularity, and then you've got the men's chorus of all the dragoon guards, all the military men that the women's chorus was in love with last year when military men were more in style. And so you've got them all just yelling at each other in music, and it's amazing, and I love it.
Is there anything that you don't like about Gilbert and Sullivan? And if so, how do you handle that?
A little bit of this earlier. There is the Mikado, which is set in Japan. It's important to stress that it's not set in actual Japan. It's set in a fictional Japan, which doesn't really bear any resemblance to the reality of Japan, which is why Lamplighters changing it over to Renaissance Italy works so well, because the setting doesn't really have anything to do with it. There's also another operetta called Utopia Limited, which is set in this sort of fictional South Seas country. And honestly, it's not one of their best. So it's not performed very often. So you can sort of skirt around the problems inherent in the setting. And again, it's using the setting to poke fun at Victorian England. There's one song, which is, I'm going to say, the best known song out of it, which is the patter song that the men's chorus does, called Society Has Quite Forsaken. And that is basically poking fun at England and social reforms. You know, we've solved the labor question with discrimination polished. Now poverty is obsolete and hunger is abolished. And the chorus goes, we're going to abolish it in England. So they're basically like, the island nation is saying, we fixed all these issues. And England is like, yeah, we're working on it. We're going to get to that. Sure. Yeah.
And that's yet another bit that if you say that joke today, it's the exact same punchline.
Precisely. So you may not recognize the exact references. You know, our city we have beautified, we've done it willy-nilly, and all that isn't Belgrove Square is Strand and Piccadilly. And then the reply is, we haven't any slummeries in England. So you don't have to know that Belgrave Square is an upper-class neighborhood. You don't have to know what Strand and Piccadilly is, because the context tells you. So the underlying themes are, I am afraid, always going to be relevant.
Do you have any favorite memories from performing in the Gilbert and Sullivan show?
I have one ridiculous favorite memory, which is I was performing with a different Gilbert and Sullivan group than Lamplighters. We were doing Patience, and for the Act 1 finale, I got to rush downstage and slam full force into one of the Dragoon guards, and that was just ridiculously fun to do. But I have to say, other than that, I love performing. I love being on stage because you get to be up close to all of these amazing performers, and you get to see and listen to them, and you get to watch everything take shape over the course of the rehearsal process. And then you get to be right there every single night. You get better than a front row seat. You're up on stage with them. And that's just my favorite. I love that.
Laura, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about Gilbert and Sullivan, you can find a link to the Lamplighters Music Theater of San Francisco in the episode description. And if you have something that you love so freaking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Freaking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.